I told you how excited I am to have our speaker, Dr. Nora Kenny Whitley. And so it's great to have her here. I know you'll feel the same way as you may have in what she has recommended for you to read. San Diego Times had that wonderful news article, which was just great. So
that's very good.
Your notoriety is even growing. And at this time, I'd like to just formally welcome Dr. Kenny, Nora Kenny, and she brought someone with her. And I'm going to turn things over to Nora and let her take it from here.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you so much for the invitation. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So like Monica introduced, I'm Dr. Nora Kenny. I'm the Interim Director of Occupational and Non-Credit Programs here at Palomar College, which includes our Rising Scholars Program for currently and formerly incarcerated students. So I thought that we would just go through the slides, but and I'll introduce Vanessa in just a minute. But I'm one of these people that if you have a question or a comment, I can see you all on the little Brady Bunch thing. So just feel free to stop me and we can be a bit more organic. Yeah, so you can see a couple of the cohorts that we've had, and the goal, of course, is graduation. And let me just do this. Okay. Oh, okay. So here's a statistic that you might have seen. People talk about the school to prison pipeline, and as some of you who've read the Union Tribune story, it is definitely a phenomenon and a dynamic, unfortunately. But like I said in the story, in the Union Tribune, it's unfortunate that schools are saddled with yet another social problem. And I assume that some of you are educators, retired educators or current educators, and I just feel so strongly about schools getting so much responsibility with so few resources. So I just am conscious of that and conscious of that. But the amazing thing about the school to prison pipeline is that when it goes back into the school and does that full loop, you can see on this slide the results. So 68% of all incarcerated people are rearrested within 3 years of release. That number becomes 14% when someone gets an associate degree. 5.6% with a bachelor's and less than 1% with a master's degree. And that's the goal of the Rising Scholars. Vocational also is in these statistics, and that's at about 30%. So it's amazing. Like, the power of education cannot be overstated. And I think that one of the reasons that things at Palomar work so well is that most students and most people who are arrested and are feeding that mass incarceration cycle are really grappling with addiction and trauma. And Palomar College has a very robust alcohol and other drug studies program. And more than half, I'd say most of our students are in that program getting certificates and learning about the disease of addiction. And I fully believe that's why Palomar has such a strong program, is because most of our students are taking those classes and learning about not just their own recovery, but also how to give back and how to help people as they tack on those days of sobriety, right? And so most of our students come to school because they want to learn about addiction and they want to serve the community and they want to right the wrongs that they feel they've perpetrated on themselves and on their communities. And so I invited Vanessa here. If you heard me chatting before, Vanessa just happened to be coming to my office, and I said, oh, could you sit in on this presentation? Because as you can see Vanessa here on the screen and in person, she's a rising scholar, but she's also a policy advocate and an activist in this space. She is the first student to be hired in the office of the president. And that's because she's making massive waves nationally with policy around mass incarceration. And I'm going to let Vanessa share some of the things that she's been doing. And I'm just going to set things up with, she's been to DC a couple times recently, and has been invited to go and has been invited on multiple national podcasts. She's taking alcohol and other drug studies, and she's and she's going to study law and public policy. So I'm going to let Vanessa just talk about her background and what she's passionate about. And that's why I invited her, because I was like, oh, these are folks who are engaged in policy and politics. So go ahead, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for allowing me to use this platform to share a little bit about my background and what I'm passionate about. And I'm going to be as brief as possible because I don't want to take up this whole meeting, but I just want to share some things so you can get a small glimpse and maybe appreciate where I've come, how far I've come. So I have been an addict for over 30 years, addicted to heroin and meth prior to now. A previous addict, so I'm in recovery. I'm no longer, I've been delivered from my addiction. I'm a firm believer in God. I've surrendered my whole life to him. And that was where my turning point happened, was in federal prison. I'm also a mother of 3 adult children, and my youngest daughter is special needs, and she's 25, and she requires full-time care. And I grew up in poverty, and in San Marcos, well, actually Vista, both San Marcos Vista, and I was sexually abused as a child by a distant relative, and that kind of just my life spiraled out of control from that point. So I got involved in drugs at a very, very young age because I didn't know how to deal with my trauma, and I didn't know how to speak out about it because of the culture that I grew up in. That's something that you just don't speak about. Now, I didn't have any coping skills. My parents did the best they could with me. And obviously I ended going down a darker path. I was in and out of mental health institutions. I got diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar. I was on probably every kind of psychotropic medication you can think of, in and out of probably every mental health institution in San Diego County. And I just didn't know how to get my life together. In and out of jail continuously, like it was a cycle. Rearrested multiple times for testing dirty because I could just never get clean. So eventually I landed in federal prison in 2017. And they sent me to FCI Tallahassee, Florida, which is way across the country. And at that time, I was really worried because my mother was a primary caretaker to my special needs daughter, and my mom's old and she has a lot of health problems. So federal prison changed my life because I knew I had to get my life in order. And that's where I had what I'm going to just say, a spiritual encounter with God. I was at my lowest point, and that's when my whole life turned around. So I had a passion for law while I was in prison. I had a passion to learn about law, study law, learn about policies. And that became my thing in there. And I started helping other women with like their motions, and I filed my own motion while I was in there. I had to handwrite it because we were during COVID lockdown and they didn't give us access to computers or anything like that. So I handwrote it and it went out, and of course the judge denied it. But during that time, I wrote a letter to an organization, a bipartisan organization called FAM, which stands for Families Against Mandatory Minimums. And I explained my situation. And because of the First Step Act that had gotten passed, that opened a door for me to file a compassionate release in the court. So the judge denied it, but he left the door open for me to refile. And FAM found me an attorney who got me out pro bono. She took on my case pro bono. And I ended up getting out early on a compassionate release from the halfway house by the grace of God. And I got home on home confinement from that point. And, you know, Dr. Nora brought up an important part about recidivism. And I could have violated probation multiple times for technicalities, not because of anything wrong that I was doing. And thank goodness I have had the best probation officers. But one of the problems that I faced during my reentry, which I still am in reentry, by the way, I will always be in reentry until I successfully complete probation. So even though I've been out for 2 years, I'm still in reentry. So one of the barriers I had was employment and having to do mandatory drug testing. And nobody would hire me because of my record. And thank goodness I knew somebody who got me into a position at a Target in Encinitas. And I had to quit that job because of the mandatory drug testing that I was required to do. So because the drug testing is only done during a certain amount of hours during the day and all the way in San Marcos, and I did not have my driver's license at the time. So, and I was required to work part-time. So the Target, told me that I had to come back when I was no longer on probation because they couldn't accommodate me, which that ended up being a blessing in disguise. Because from that point, my probation officer gave me permission to come to school, which I thought was pretty kind of wild that I had to even get his approval. But I did get permission to come to school. I started off at Maricosta, and that was it was a good thing, but ended up, I had to leave Maricosta, and I came over here full time, it's just been a blessing ever since I've been here. Now, I also, like Dr. Nora said, I've lobbied. So FAM has flown me out to DC, and I've lobbied directly in Capitol Hill. I've met, I met Cory Booker, I met Kelly Armstrong. I've met, what was that one guy that came here?
Oh, Mike Levin.
I met Mike Levin, the other one, the other tall white guy that was here last, I can't remember his name right now. Anyways, I've met a lot of politicians, and I went to a summit, a USSC summit training session they had in LA last month, I believe it was. And I met the chair and the vice chair of the USSC, United States Sentencing Commission. I took pictures with them, and I asked him when I go out there, if they would be interested in watching the movie, the film, because one of the chairs, his name is Restrepo. He does a lot of reentry work, and he's a judge. So he does a lot of reentry work. He has a very successful reentry program, and he's very interested. We're waiting to hear back from him.
Can you spell what reentry is?
Okay. Reentry is somebody who has left incarceration and they're trying to reintegrate. And that is a field where my passion is, because I do believe in accountability. And I've learned how to believe in accountability from being in federal prison. Because in federal prison, there was a lot of corruption by the prison officials. So I didn't understand why accountability doesn't apply both ways, and that is like big thing for me, because I saw a lot of corruption. A lot of women were getting raped in there, and it was a very, very traumatizing for me. Federal prison, not only did it change my life, it also traumatized me. And that is probably the scariest part for me as a woman, going back and being with people who are supposed to be our legal custodians, but are actually abusing their authority. And that's one of the things that I lobbied for, is the Prison Oversight Act. So the Prison Oversight Act would have somebody outside agency, like overseeing what's going on in the prison system, because they do a lot of covering up for each other. So I kind of lost my train of thought right now. So reentry is people leaving prison and reintegrating somehow. My hope and prayer is everybody reintegrates successfully. Not everybody is as resilient as I am. And I know that because I see the statistics still, and I've known people who have gone back, and I just feel that my heart is there with them, because sometimes it's just easier to go back. It's so hard to reintegrate when you don't have support. And a lot of us struggle with basic needs. I'm fortunate that I have my mother still alive, and I have 3 adult children. We're not, the Brady Bunch family. We're very dysfunctional, but I'm fortunate to have the family that I have, and I love them. And they support what I do, even though we, don't always get along. I have a lot of making up to do, and I believe that is one of my things that I love about giving back to the community, because there's so much healing for myself when I step out of myself and I serve others. And that is where my heart is, mainly is, like I said, I do believe in accountability, but my heart is in reentry. And I want to focus on post-conviction relief when I do eventually go to law school, because I do want to be an attorney, but I also want to do policy changes on a macro level. So my heart is working with post-conviction relief because I do believe in accountability, but I also believe that people can change. And everybody thought that I was once a lost cause. And I think I blow people away because they don't, I'm just the opposite of what they knew me to be. You know, so I know people can change because I've seen the change in people. I've been around people who don't seem like there's any hope for them. But in my case, God can change anybody. And I want to focus on post-conviction relief because I believe that people that are serving these unjust sentences, these harsh, long sentences, when they've rehabilitated themselves, they don't belong there anymore. And everybody that I know that has been released from prison, their passion is also making amends and giving back. You know, and some people lack the ability to do that because they're just trying to survive out here with basic needs, with housing, with employment, you know, and it's interesting because, you know, we have our allies, but we also are, you know, we enter a society that sometimes treats us like we have like a contagious disease, you know, and that's it. I'm, you know, I'm in this space because I want to make a difference, because I know what it's like to struggle. And I know that when everybody makes mistakes, everybody does. Nobody's perfect. And given the right support, there's just no telling how far somebody can go. And I'm fortunate enough to be as resilient as I am. And I'm fortunate enough to have the best mentors in the world. One of them standing right here, who believe in our potential. And I think that's the thing, you know, it takes, there's a saying, I think Glenn Martin said this, that the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from power and resource. And, you know, we have solutions, but in order for people to listen to us, we have to build up some credibility. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing everything I can to build up credibility. And I also, not only do I advocate for FAM, I'm also part of Initiate Justice Action. I'm a member for them. I do a lot, and because this is my passion is giving back. My passion is showing people that just because you have a criminal record doesn't mean you shouldn't be demonized for the rest of your life. Everybody deserves a second chance. I mean, some way with the amount of this mass incarceration, it's touching every corner of the earth. And I promise you, somebody you know who knows somebody, somehow you're connected to somebody who's locked up or has a record. There's just no way that you're not, you know, and well, now you are. If you weren't, I'm talking to you. So now you are. And so with that, I'm gonna close out for now, and I'll answer any questions you guys have. And I thank you so much for allowing me to use my voice here today.
Vanessa, thank you so much. I certainly wish you well in your continued reentry, your blessed recovery, and your willingness to share your story. Thank you so much.
Vanessa, I'm just curious, was AA or NA part of your story? Was there that support of the group?
Yes, in the beginning, I was, I had to attend meetings. I'm a McAllister alumni. So actually they just did their walk for sobriety and they used my story. They sent out massive emails to raise money for their walk for sobriety. I've been in AA and NA, but I participate more in Celebrate Recovery. My sponsor, she works at FRC in Oceanside, but she's also a minister, and she's somebody I've known for a very long time. And she's perfect for me because she knows me from when I was in my addiction. And like I said, you know, her beliefs are in alignment with mine. So that works for me, and we pray a lot together. So that's the foundation of my life is Jesus and God. And I'm not ashamed to say that because that I've seen answers to prayers. So
I want to share that the folks you might hear in the background, that's actually an AANA meeting happening right now in the Rising Scholars building. And that happens. And the guy you might have heard open the doors and say, "I'm leaving, bye," is someone that before I was at Palomar, I taught at the Vista Jail. And he was one of my students at the Vista Jail, and we reconnected, and he told me, "Hey, I'm 7 days clean," or whatever it was. I'm like, "Come to school, there's a meeting." Like, oh, actually he came to visit me, and it happened to be on Wednesday at the time that they do a meeting. So now he comes back, and so he's getting support from this program, even if he's not a student. So I want to throw out a few statistics out there that are in the film, and I'll talk about the film in just a minute. So Vanessa's talking about all the reasons why people who are on probation or parole get reincarcerated, and that's because they have over 45,000 laws that are in place to keep people who are on probation and parole on the straight and narrow. But it's things like, I had a student who said, "Oh, my PO came in and I had kombucha in my refrigerator and I'm not supposed to have any alcohol." And he didn't know that there was alcohol in kombucha, right? And just like or you can't be associated with someone who's a documented gang member. What if that's your cousin and you go to a wedding, right? And so there's just all these crazy things. And to touch on a few more statistics, it's about 600,000 people are released from jails and prisons every year in this country alone. And 45% of families have someone who's been incarcerated. So this is endemic. This is part of our fabric. And so that's why reentry is so critical. I want to give you an opportunity to ask Vanessa questions, or I can keep going with the slides and tell you a bit about the program and how it works.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you brought Vanessa, and I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from answering any questions, but I'm also highly curious for anything that you had planned to share with us about the program.
Sure, oh, go ahead, Carol. I see your hand. You're muted.
I actually posted the question in the chat, but it's, do you think that the parole system actually works given the kinds of demands for reporting, drug testing, permission to go anywhere? Would more people successfully integrate without these kinds of ongoing monitoring?
I think that the parole system should work as a support system and not like a punitive system. So when you have parole officers that are supportive and working with you, when they see you struggle, they're not just ready to throw you back in there. Well, what do you need? Let's get you what you need. And a lot of the times they don't listen. It's just, you have to do this, and this, and there better not be any excuse. And sometimes there is excuses, and some of them they don't want to hear it. So like I said, I'm fortunate to have good parole officers, but also I have to get permission just to travel outside of the county.
I know.
We went to UC Irvine last week, and my parole officer didn't approve it until like up to the very hour that I was scheduled to leave. And I sent her a request to go 10 days ahead of time. And it's stuff like that it's a barrier. Now for me, probation, I'm on federal probation, it's a barrier. And for a lot of people might need the supervision, but most of us, we don't. We just need the support, not the punitive supervision type model. And I think after you've built up a rapport, I have to serve out 6 years of federal probation. So I have to deal with this for 6 years. I have 4 more years to go. And I've been so consistent on my path. There's just no turning back for me. There's no way I'm going to turn backwards. There's no way. And so I have to put up with this. It is my fault. I'll be the first to admit that I got myself in this situation, but I'm at the point in my life where now it's more of a hindrance, and it's a barrier, and it's preventing me from from spreading my wings pretty much.
So one follow-up to that is, do you think part of this enforcement, draconian enforcement, is due to the increasing privatization of the whole penal system?
I do, because I do know that they partner up with certain. It's about money, I believe, and it's about head count. It's about partnering up like quota. it's a quota. They have to have certain amount of people doing in here. They have to have certain amount in doing domestic violence groups. It's all about money. And that I know just from off the record stuff that I've learned on my own. But it's like I said, it's if we were to release a lot of people, like let's say some bill got passed and a lot of people were released, the majority of them, I think the majority of them are going to be successful if they have the support they need out here, and that's proven. And we have a really good track record at Rising Scholars with we're a very, very tight-knit group. And I think a lot of that reason is because we understand the barriers. We understand the trauma behind the reason why we ended up in prison in the first place. And I'm gonna speak from personal experience. Everybody that I know that has done time has experienced some kind of trauma in their life, and or some of them, for some people, the reason they end up in prison or in jail, it's because of survival, and that's a component that most people don't understand. It's hard out here, and for a lot of us, even in our addiction, it's survival, and for people that don't understand what that looks like, it's not a choice. For some people, it's survival. And that is something that, like, if I could someday, I'm going to put it together in a speech that I hope to give on a national level.
And she's running for office.
Could you just maybe speak as to what Palomar is doing how do you educate some of these parole officers?
Oh, that's we'll just get right into that. Okay. So, thank goodness for Dr. Nora believing in our brilliant ideas, that we have allies and we have people that believe in us and what we do. And so last year, so April is a month of second chances. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but President Clinton first declared April as Second Chance Month. And you can find that on the White House website when they make a declaration or proclamation. And Biden reaffirmed the proclamation. So I knew about that when I was in prison, but Maricosa didn't know about that. Palomar didn't know about that. Cal State didn't know about that. So when I brought it to their attention, we need to do something for April Second Chance Month. Everybody was on board. And we hosted a reentry resource fair on campus here last year. And I was focusing on getting resources for people coming into reentry. And one of the places I wanted to go to was a parole office. So I went to the parole office to drop off a flyer, and they were really the guy that took the flyer for me, he was really kind of rude, and I mean, I'm sure he comes across a lot of parolees where he needs to be rude, but he was rude to me, and I didn't let it stop me. I wasn't afraid. I didn't let it stop me, and I gave him the flyer and I said, please have your clients come to this. They're going to need the support. They're going to need the support. And he's like, well, what's this? And I explained to him, and so then I gave him the flyer. He asked for my card and I left. A couple of days later, I get a call from a lady who asked me to come into the division there. So I went in there, and she took me out back, and she was giving me a tour of the whole parole office. And I noticed that all the agents were like following her around. So I figured she was somebody important there. And she was telling me that, they do a PAC meeting, kind of the same thing. They're putting a resource fair together, and she's interested in knowing how we're planning our event, and she wanted to come to our event. It turns out that she's over the whole division there. So her name is Agent Tobias, and she's an ally. So she ended up coming here, and I introduced her to Dr. Nora, and just one thing led to another. We've become really close. And this month is the first month that we're bringing the PAC meeting to Palomar, just from that connection. So we're bringing the PAC meeting here to Palomar. It's going to be a resource fair. And this is a first for Palomar and a first for them.
I want to add that the person who had my job before me years ago, when she started the program in 2017-18, she was trying to get the PAC meetings here on campus. This is a woman, a professional here at Palomar, someone at my level. She's got an MBA, and she wasn't ever able to do it. And then we stumbled upon Vanessa, and she made it happen. So
It was God, you know, and I can't take credit for that, because a lot of prayer goes into my work that I do. And I believe that there's just, you know, something greater beyond me, which I call God, Jesus, who is orchestrating all these things and making them happen, because it's just the right thing to do. You know, why not give them support? Why not set them up for success? Like I said, not everybody is as resilient, and there's a lot of mental health issues going on there. You do not leave prison without some kind of mental health PTSD. Post-incarceration PTSD is a very, very real thing.
So I want to just chat with you about the Rising Scholars Program and what we do. So you can see on the slide that we started in 2018. About 175, probably closer to 200 students have completed credit courses at the Vista Detention Facility. So we do have a program for currently incarcerated people at the Vista Jail. We work primarily now, we used to work with the veterans. There's a veterans housing module at the jail. There still is. And before COVID, there was also another housing module for people who were interested in doing school. So we work with them. And then I'm going to have to revise this. Over 300 students comprise our on-campus and transfer community. Right now, we have probably, I'm going to say like 120 students who are actively enrolled in classes now. And so that doesn't include students who have transferred. Most of them transfer to Cal State San Marcos, where we have a partnership with their Project Rebound program. You can see that in the jail, this is really interesting to me. 75% of students completed courses and 57% of them earned A's. And what I think this is because their basic needs were met. Yes, they were in jail and they were in their trauma, but they didn't have to worry about working. And they didn't have to worry about, they couldn't, I mean, they were worrying about all those things, but they couldn't. At this point, they were focused on school and they outperformed the general population significantly. And for me, that's always really interesting. So you can see here, this is actually my classroom on the right. And this was a student teaching students math because I suck at math, and the students were really good at it. I'm like, you do this, you're gonna be better at it than I am. And then you see here on the left is Edgar Diaz. So Edgar started as a Palomar College student, and he was also a Grossmont Adult School student, which I was teaching for Grossmont at the time. And so he got connected to education while he was incarcerated. He's a young man from San Diego. And so he started taking classes. He wanted to be a mechanical engineer. When he was released in 2020, I just happened to have come to Palomar and told everyone before I was leaving the jail, here's the program that I'm working for at Palomar. Get in touch with me and I'll help you continue. And Edgar got in touch with me. We dropped off a laptop at his house in San Diego, and he did everything online. Well, last spring, he finished here at Palomar, and now he's a student at University of San Diego. He's gotten a full ride. We're working on him getting housing for him and his two kids. He's a single dad over on campus, but he lives in San Diego. So, and in the meantime, by the way, he changed his major from mechanical engineering to Chicano studies because he took a Palomar College Chicano studies class while he was incarcerated, and he and the professor just clicked. And so now he and Alex Gomez are working very closely together. And Edgar wants to work in the community and help young people who share in his path. So he's an amazing success story. He's our first graduate who started in the jail. So I love talking about him. Our on-campus program, basically we have a couple things that people do the on-campus program. They can come in the summer, and we have a summer bridge program. It's a cohort model where people take 2 classes together. Both of those classes are taught by either formerly incarcerated professors or professors who've had someone in their family who've been incarcerated. So they have to be very familiar with the mass incarceration and the justice system. We help them with everything. And at the core of the success of the program is the peer mentorship structure. And Vanessa referred to that, the employment piece. So we have a lot of students who have serious charges, and we've worked with our HR department to change policy here on campus. And that's all based on the chancellor's office at the state level back in 2018 sent out a memo saying hiring formerly incarcerated people is an equity. It is an issue of equity. And hereby with this memo, we give you permission to do what you need to do to hire formerly incarcerated people if it's appropriate. For example, if someone has done fraud in an accounting space, you wouldn't hire them to do the books, right? Um, so those kinds of things, but it's considered on a case-by-case basis. So we've been able to hire, right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we've got 5 peer mentors. Yeah, 5 peer mentors, another one that's on the way, and who are working with rising scholars to support new students and students in general with anything and everything, academics, housing, just anything that they need. And then we also have placed students throughout campus. We have Vanessa working in the office of the president. We have a couple students who are running the food pantry. We have a student who's running comment closet where they give out free clothes. And these students, by the way, are getting staff positions. We have a new staff person who we're just waiting for his background to clear, and he's going to be a full-time permanent staff member. He's served a life sentence, and he's going to be the main person that when students walk into the building, that he's the guy that they see and connect with, and he provides support. So my whole goal is to make way for students and formerly incarcerated people to lead this program. I actually have other programs that I oversee. And so once there's a leadership team and enough staffing here, then I'm gonna slowly just kind of do my thing and focus on other programs and let the formerly incarcerated folks run this. And right now they do make many of the decisions, they handle all the events. And my goal is to mentor them, to guide them, so that when professional positions come up, they've got the credentials to do it and they've got the experience. So we do have that powerful cohort model, everyone working together to mentor each other. We help with basic needs, including participation stipends. We got grants last summer and the summer before from the DA's office at $50,000 each summer. So the foundation here at Palomar raises money for us, which is amazing because that's how we can pay the participation stipends. We provide scholarships. If we had a student a couple weeks ago say, hey, my paycheck was a little bit light the last pay period, and I got this great new room in a beautiful home, and I don't have first and last month's rent. So I said, okay, go to the foundation. They just sent him a check, right? And so that's something that they do, and they're amazing. So we have the summer program, which is a cohort model, but students can come anytime and we help them enroll in Palomar. We have classes that are designated for rising scholars that are taught by professors who we know are allies. And so we kind of send people to the same place so they can take classes together. And that's really fun. And the alcohol and other drug studies is full of rising scholars as well. So here you can see some of our folks. Let's see, I have a cousin in prison. Okay. Yeah. So I just share these photos. We have during the summer and also throughout the year, we do field trips. You can see Daisy on the left. That's her when she completed the summer program. And at the end of the summer program, we have a graduation ceremony because a lot of times students haven't had a chance to walk across the stage, and we help them get dressed up. We get these nice certificates. Last year we had Corey Uden from Assembly Person Marie Waldron's office. He came and presented certificates of achievement from her office. And then throughout the year, we do things like you can see the students at the beach. We had gone to UCSD and then to Scripps and gotten a tour of Scripps and the pier. We got to go out on the pier, which I'd never been able to do before. And then we do things on campus. Students are here in the PCTV studio. You can see down there. So, and then like we went to LA, in the right corner, there's Bree and Cynthia. That's at Homeboy Industries. So we do field trips where we take students out together in spaces that allow them to become team building and then also inspiring, like, oh, I want to go to UCSD and become an oceanographer, you know? So those are just some nice pictures of that. Some more, yeah, did someone have a question?
I do. What is the certificated program? What type of a certificate do people receive when they complete the program? Is it something that entitles them to a certain occupation or?
No, that's not like a official Palomar certificate. They are getting certificates in other programs, like from the alcohol and other drug studies or welding or media studies, but that certificate is just it's just an internal program certificate of achievement. And they keep them because they're used to, they'll show them to their parole officers and say, hey, look, I completed this program. Or if they're trying to get off probation or parole early, they'll say, okay, here's my certificate from alcohol and other drug studies. Here's my certificate of completion from the summer program. So the students will come in with these massive binders where they're documenting all the stuff they've done. So you can see here just some more photos of, so recently in the last, I don't know, it's been maybe 6 months, we got a building on campus, which I'm in right now. And it was a collaboration with architecture, interior design, and cabinetry and furniture technology. So our interior design faculty designed the renovation, and then cabinetry and furniture technology students built custom furniture for the building. So students built this space for students. They built out a kitchenette that's beautiful, a study center, a really neat piece of furniture that's in the front when you come in. So this was really, it really represents Palomar and the support that there is for this program. People across campus, they want to teach in this program. They want to work with rising scholars, and they want to help, they want to support, and it's really quite amazing. So that's the building that we're in right now, where we can, and it's been a dream, where on my first day on the job, I walked around campus with a student and I was like, where can I find a space? Let's go talk to the athletics director, because they always get lots of space. And he said, oh, there's that little trailer on the track. And I looked at it and I was like, we could have this whole building. It's a little trailer. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 office type places and a little living room and a kitchenette. But for us, it's like this amazing thing. Other programs don't have this kind of space, honestly. And that has enabled us to have a constant open house. And since we opened the building in August alone, we had 35 new students.
Wow.
Sign up for summer because of this space. We've had students who will be taking the bus and they see someone who clearly has just gotten out of the jail. Like we wouldn't notice it, but
We know each other.
because I got the little paper bag, and he just said, where are you going? And he's like, I don't know. And he brought him here, and he walked in, and Vanessa said, what's your name? And he told her his name, and she's like, I know your dad. We're good friends. So that's what this building enables us to do. So I want to share, we also have this film that there was a screening back in June, and we are talking about doing another screening. So the film came from PCTV, Palomar College TV. I didn't know this, and I had worked here for a couple years. They have won about 35 to 40 Emmy Awards for their documentaries. And at some point I was working with the administrator who oversees Palomar College TV, and we started talking about the program. And so he introduced me to the producer director, who started looking at the Zooms from the classroom and started getting to know students and just coming to events, and immediately was like, oh, we have to make a film about this. And so they filmed for well over a year, I'd say more like a year and a half. And they made this documentary, and it's won 2 Emmys. It won an Emmy for Best Director and one for Best Documentary.
Wow.
It premiered in June at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. And we've been screening all over the place. Vanessa and I and 2 other students we're traveling to San Francisco on Sunday. We are presenting at a conference, a statewide conference for the RP group, which does research and professional development for the community colleges. And we're also doing a screening at College of Marin after we get a private tour, VIP tour of Alcatraz on Monday morning, which is Indigenous Peoples Day, when they have this amazing sunrise ceremony where 5,000 people from tribes all across the country come to San Francisco and Alcatraz to commemorate the start of the Red Power movement, and we are going to be there. Carol, I see your hand up.
I have another question. So this is fabulous. Are there any other programs like this in the state, in the nation? Are you other than showing this movie, what is being done to get beyond your own little niche in San Marcos to spread this success to others?
Yes, thank you. So the filmmaker is working on a distribution deal. We're hoping that all of their films so far have showed on PBS. He says this is their best film, and he thinks that there's a chance that it could be shown on a streaming platform like Netflix or HBO. But that's going to be, their contracts people working with our contracts people. So in the meantime, we're doing all kinds of screenings. We're talking about doing a screening on Alcatraz, and we're partnering with the National Park Service. Because they oversee Alcatraz. They've been working with San Quentin and universities and all kinds of programs. So to answer your question, yes, there are programs like ours in California. So the community college system is 116 colleges, and I think that there are Rising Scholars programs at, I want to say 80 of those colleges.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and yeah, some of them are like ours, like Southwestern has a pretty good program, but ours is, so I'm just gonna brag here. When Rising Scholars, the Chancellor's Office, the Board of Governors for the community college system said, we want to have 2 programs come. We want to learn about this program. We want someone who does programming in the prisons, and we want someone who does a good on-campus program. And so we were invited. And so Luis, who's in the film, and I went to Sacramento in January of last year and presented on behalf of Rising Scholars. So at the community college level is Rising Scholars. At the Cal State level, it's called Project Rebound, and there's a great program at Cal State San Marcos. And then at the UC system, it's called Underground Scholars. So California has the infrastructure to support these programs, and there is funding. We are funded partially through the Chancellor's Office. And then we also get funding from the foundation wherever we can get it, and also from our equity fund here on campus. And then the UC system, they have $4 million of ongoing annual funding for their programs. But across the country, not so much. And the film talks about that.
Wow.
Are you getting pushback from the legislature or anybody who thinks, oh no, we want to keep people monitored in jail, etc.? No.
This is what's so weird. And so we went to Sacramento this summer, and we had an amazing private tour of the Capitol from the Secretary of the Senate. And one of the things, I'm not sure if this is typical, and maybe you know this. So when it came to be voted on, as far as us getting the ongoing funding of $10 million a year statewide, it passed unanimously. And I don't know if it's that, yeah. Okay, so it is a big deal, because I'm like, wait, that seems really weird, right? Like, what other issue do you know that gets bipartisan support like that, especially right now?
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. Paula, go ahead.
You're
Paula,
muted,
you're
Paula. She's still muted.
Paula,
Thank you. I know you mentioned that one person brought another person to your facility because they identified them as leaving jail, but how do most of these students get to your program?
So we have community partners all over the place. We have parole and probation. They all know us. And now they really know us because of the film and because of the building. So like McAllister is a recovery program. They send students. Interfaith from in Escondido, they send people. Word of mouth. This is a very efficient community.
Okay.
Very efficient. And right now, like, we don't even really need to do much outreach. Like, we can't, because we don't have the staff in place yet to support everyone. And so the administrative team here, we're like, like, of course, we're thrilled to have students coming, but it's also like, holy mackerel, we can't, like, we're waiting for this person to get onboarded because it's just a lot. So there's not at all an issue of, I think that people know that Palomar has a really good program, and they're just all finding their way here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to share the trailer of the film, if you'd like to see it. It's just a minute or so. No, it's 2 minutes long. So let me see if I can share that. Let's see.
Nora, Doris Payne had a question.
Oh, go ahead, Doris.
I'm a graduate of Northwestern, and I read recently that they have such an amazing program where the undergraduates from the college, from the university, go into the prison. So they're prisoners and college students working together. And you can imagine what an experience that is for some of the college students to relate. I mean, they definitely learn from each other. I've been
Absolutely.
very impressed.
That's really cool. Thank you for letting me know about that. That sounds like there's a lot of that kind of work going on in San Quentin. San Quentin is doing amazing work in the education space. And actually Governor Newsom they're using San Quentin as a model for that, exactly what Vanessa was talking about, less punitive, more actually reforming people and helping people to rehabilitate and just not treating them like disposable, right? I really feel like that's been the MO, is like, oh, these people are just disposable. So I think that there's, the US is so about the underdog. And I think that it's a kind of not to be gross, but it's like a sexy story. You know what I mean? Like seeing people who are, like there's this mystique of the space of the prison. And so I think people are fascinated by these mostly men that come out and are trying to put their lives back together. And it really is like a Rocky kind of David and Goliath kind of thing. Like the system is so set up against people. And I feel like there are, like my mom, who's 86, super conservative Mormon, she watches this film and she's like, why are they, and in the film, Richie, who has tattoos all over his face, he gets profiled all the time and pulled over all the time. And anytime he does, because he was on parole, he automatically gets handcuffed. And when my mom saw that, she said, why are they handcuffing him? There's 4 officers around him. Like for her, that didn't feel right. And I was like, what? Go mom, like I think that people just see that it's not okay to just not give, people have served their time. They've done decades in prison and then they come out and they it's like a life sentence. And I say that in the film. And they start when they're kids, when they're babies. Like Vanessa, she published a story. She was addicted to meth at 11 years old. Right? And we have students that start in gangs. There's trauma in the household. They start in gangs. They get caught up in stuff on the streets. They start using drugs and they are immediately incarcerated in juvenile. And then when they're 17, 18, they get tried and convicted as adults. And that is our student. That's like the typical student. And then they do a life sentence. And then at 45, they come out and they're like, what do I do now? It's just, I mean, every student has a story like that. Yeah. So if you'd like, should I show the trailer?
Please.
Okay, let's see. Let's see, share the screen. So can you all see that? The 2 gentlemen? Okay, hopefully this will work.
I carry handguns, I stab people, I rob people, I stole.
We govern from a politic of fear. This is how you write 45,000 laws, policies, and sanctions. You write that from a place of trying to ensure that you're safe from them.
I don't want to be nobody. I don't want to be the hardest dude on the block. That ain't me no more.
I knew I wanted help, but at the time I didn't know what help looked like.
I'm trying to get off parole. I'm trying to get sober. I'm trying to find work.
Why is it that they come home and we don't give them those opportunities? We take them away time and again.
We've created the conditions that produce more violence and more instability than we had we not.
Well, every time I was released from jail, I was deemed to fail. I feel like this program completely flips that script.
But I never thought I was going to go to college, let alone graduate from high school. Sometimes I still look back and I'm like, is this real? Am I here?
They've been incarcerated. That's all they've been thinking about, ways to turn their lives around.
And sometimes we need those life lessons to get us back on the path that we were meant to take.
I guarantee you, placing ourselves in the center of our education will heal.
From carrying a gun in my backpack to carrying a laptop in my backpack, knives, bats, rocks, to pen, paper, and books. I can never repay teachers, doctors, back, but I promise you all that I will pass down what you passed down to me.
They're not just criminals. Their fathers, brothers, sisters, mothers, uncles, aunts, cousins. Family.
Wow.
You have a question, Monica?
I just have a comment that this is a must-see movie. I sure hope that we'll all know when we can see it. And I also want to confess that we normally are going to San Quentin, and I, as a Northern California native, remember the day when several tribes took over San Quentin, and that was quite remarkable. So it's wonderful to know that they have this anniversary. We haven't, something we say at the beginning of each meeting, and I overlooked it tonight, where we honor the land, and I hope you've all read it in the agenda item. I'm sorry that we didn't read it out loud tonight, but it's a very important message that we have implemented since almost the beginning of our group, and it's sacred. So thank you for the work you're doing there and with the Native peoples as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love, I mean, we are in stolen land.
And if that's not traumatic, what is traumatic? You know?
Right. And our policies around that are also traumatizing. Luis, who is the one of the gentlemen in the film, he shares openly that some immigration policies have really impacted his life. And I want to share that Luis and I, we talk quite frequently. And the other day he kept calling me, and I was like, I called him back finally because I was in meetings. I'm like, and he said, I wanted to share with you. I went to, he transferred to UCLA, as you can see from the film. He said, I went to fill out my paperwork and figure out my classes for next quarter. And, you know, he's got 2 majors and a minor. And he said, I finished my sociology degree. And he went to go fill out paperwork. And I said, oh, you're done with sociology. So the young man who was saying, I didn't know I'd finished high school, let alone college, he is now a UCLA graduate. And he's about to get a second degree in Chicano studies with a minor in education.
My goodness.
Yeah. So, but his trauma, you see, Sue, you saw the film. He shares his trauma. He tried to commit suicide by cop here on campus at Palomar College. Right. So these are people who in their youth were really struggling with mental health issues. And how many young people can say that? So many. But I feel like for people from underserved communities and people of color, especially, the margin of error is infinitesimal. Like the Nobel Prize that they just won for those little dots, that's how big it is, right?
Nora, when he says that in the movie about I wasn't brave enough to kill myself, and he said, so I did what I knew that the cops would kill me. Everybody should hear that as to what's going on in the streets today and everywhere.
So Carol, and I'll share with you what I taught in, I worked in Oakland when I was going to grad school at Cal Berkeley. I worked in Oakland at the same time. Kids would tell me routinely about the cops just chasing them and beating them up. I'm like, wait, what? And I was, it's just crazy. But Carol, I saw your note about PBS. This film will show at least on PBS, if not like a Netflix or a Hulu. But I want to do screenings here locally. And I'm going to loop you in because people are we are doing screenings with colleges. I was just showing Vanessa that when we had a screening in Oakland for the Oakland Film Festival, and I was able to go to that and invite some colleagues and the friends from UC Berkeley, and they want to screen it. And so now we're talking about doing a large screening at Berkeley where we invite programs, Rising Scholars programs from the other colleges, so that all those Rising Scholars can come to campus, see Berkeley as an option. And we're in UC Riverside wants to do the same thing. So I want to do it so that we're at the universities and then have the college students come and feel comfortable on those big campuses and know that that could be the next step for them. So when that does happen, when we do the next screening here, I will definitely let you know, because I do want to have one here, probably just on campus at some point.
Great.
Wow, wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. We're nearing the completion of our scheduled program, but I don't want anybody to leave without asking a burning question. Is there any, or making a comment that's important to you? If there's something you'd like to say, please take this time. Yeah, Doris?
I just wanted to ask if there's any opportunity for volunteering at your Rising Scholars program and what that might be.
You know, that's people often have that reaction, and I love that. And to be honest, I haven't known what to do with it. Like Sue said the same thing. And I was like,
I couldn't wait to get home and call her up. I looked up her number and I was like, oh, I want to volunteer there so badly.
I don't, and I have to I had to figure that out. Like I'm sure there's a process at Palomar for volunteering, you know, like if you're on campus working with students, you have to do some kind of, you know, DNA test or whatever, I don't know. But I had to figure out that piece. So I don't know, to be honest. And Sue, if you keep checking in with me, it'll remind me to ask around. So the way that I work is someone will say something like that, and then at some point I'll be like, volunteer, I'll hear, and then I'll be in a meeting, we'll be like, oh, volunteer, blah, blah, blah. I'll be like, oh, Sue Walsh, you know? So you're officially in my noodle.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with a retired attorney, so she could be helpful too, you know, and so many people here have great skills to bring.
Or if you have a foundation, what
Right.
about fundraising? Do you do fundraising?
Absolutely. Might you be looking for connections to businesses? Yes, absolutely. For hiring students. Yes. And then for the foundation, yes, we have a special account, which they were just amazing. So let me put their info in here. I think that when we do, I was just talking to the director of the foundation, because I really want to, when I do screenings, when we do these screenings, I want to bring students, and that's expensive. And so I was telling the foundation, like, hey, what if we did a screening that was a fundraiser to enable students to go to San Francisco or go to Alcatraz or wherever. So let me find that. Oh, here we go. So we have a special page on the foundation's website.
What's the name of the foundation?
It's just the Palomar College Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they're amazing. And the money goes right to students, 100%.
Is it a special designation for the Rising Scholars program?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So I put the link. We have a page on the Rising Scholars website. Oh, and it has the trailer to the film, and yeah. And they featured the program at their last community showcase, which Sue, I think you were there, right?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. We do, I mean, we're supported, but it goes so quickly. I mean, I'm signing approvals to buy students' books, and they're like $300 a pop. I'm like, what? It's crazy. And we try to send students to professors who have, like, they have a little designation that says they are a low cost or free textbook class. Because I feel like those professors, it shows something, right? It shows a professor that's very sensitive to students' needs. But then there's also like biology professors, and that's really hard to do. So, you know, like, I understand when I taught, my books were always less than $20. Like, being an English teacher, you have a little bit more of a, you know, leeway on that. But yeah. other questions? Yeah,
Nora,
Carol.
the reason that I asked the question was because Paula asked about what could volunteers do. That might be something that you might say if you know a business and just put it out there, because people may not be thinking of something like that. Is, yeah, this is what we really could use, is connections to businesses who might be friendly.
And also apartment buildings and living spaces that would be open to renting to formerly incarcerated people. That's very difficult because parole and probation agents have a tendency to show up with like, and they do this at businesses too. They'll just show up randomly with like 8 people and come in to check on someone who's at work. So how does that work? Or at home. So how does that work out with a landlord or a boss? It's just a way to intimidate and to screw up their lives, intentionally or not. So people who have like the housing piece is like all the things that everyone is having such a hard time with housing right now. Multiply that by having no renter's record, no credit, no, you know, all those things. It just makes it so difficult. And you can see in the film, Richie is trying to get that job. He's trying to get a place to live. And I do what I can, and I use my privilege to help to close those gaps, those systemic gaps. It shouldn't be that the nice white lady comes in to help to talk to a landlord and says, hey, I'm going to vouch for this guy. But that's what I had to do. And it's ridiculous that that's what I had to do. But that's what it's about. It's about lending our privilege.
Wow.
And Monica, what kind of law did you practice? Because now I'm like, ooh, lawyer.
Oh, how much time do you have?
Ooh.
I started out in a small town as a small town general practitioner, and then I did political work for a while, and then ended up in a university, in a Office of Legal Affairs as an internal attorney.
And has
in-house.
some interesting stories of what she did to get someone who had to have felon checked off into a profession that said you could not be a felon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're yeah. Well, I'm retired now, and I don't do a lot of that work anymore, but I must say that it's hard. I didn't do a lot of criminal defense work. I did some, but you know, it's part of our judicial system. And my daughter said, Mom, how can you be an attorney? Our judicial system just sucks. And then the only job she could get right out of college was as a paralegal. And then she became an attorney. And then we both still say to say, yes, there are aspects of our judicial system that, you know, need a lot of work. And so that's just how it is.
Yeah, we screened the film with, it was a combination of the DA's office and the public defender's office, and they shared a theater. And I had never, the only other time I'd seen such a reaction to the film was we screened it at Las Colinas, the women's jail. And we're trying to screen it in more jails and prisons. But the way that the DA's office and the PD's office responded to that film was really moving for me. And I got a lot of people. I saw a woman who was so upset by part of the film that she had to get up and leave. Like, I think that people who work in this space, they understand. They understand. And the DA, Summer Stephan, she wants to meet with our students, and her community liaison has reached out to me, and we talk pretty frequently, and we're working on that as well. So I think that there's a lot of hope. I think that California is really leading the way in this space, because we have students like Vanessa.
Yeah.
And they tell their stories, right?
And I think that at least I know in Oregon for sure, and I think in California, you can no longer put on the job application, are you guilty of a felony, you know?
Yes, but then, so the way that it works, because we're going through this at Palomar, they say, this is your conditional offer of employment, pending the background check, and then they get the background check. And then, so that's when things go down. So we just had our staff person, and he got the letter that says we are rescinding the job offer. And then the next paragraph says, if you want to like rebut this and show evidence of rehabilitation, but the admin who was reading this letter with him was like, what? And his head exploded. He immediately texted the president, honestly. It was I was like, oh, because that paragraph just makes it look like, yeah, it's off the table. But then you read the next paragraph, and if you have a PhD in literacy, then you go, oh no, here's the loophole. But why does it have to be like that? Why do I have to have a PhD in literacy to understand a simple letter from the employer? And when I talked to HR, they were like, oh yeah, we can, like, I looked at it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is fine. This is not a big deal.
Yeah.
But he didn't know that. So at that point, he could just be like, oh, never mind.
It's just one more stigma that you add to the list, and it's so unfortunate.
Yep. Yep. Well, I'm going to let you all go and have your dinners, but thank you so much for this.
And thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Brian.